Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today's tale was inspired by issue number 3 of the original 1984 Transformers comic book published by Marvel Comics. That one is kind of famous because it's the one with Spider Man in it. Anyway, before we get into that, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, and leave us a comment. It helps with the YouTube algorithm, and we love hearing from you guys. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive in. The prologue to this one takes place in 1984 when the Decepticons raid the Harrison nuclear power plant in Oregon. Not only do they drain the plant of all of its energy, leaving no radiation behind, they even strip the machinery there down for parts, using it, along with other bits of technology they've recently stolen, to build a strange alien fortress. Every TV network and newspaper in the country has sent someone here to cover the story. Between the media and the military, there are a ton of humans here taking photos of the new headquarters. One such photographer is Peter Parker. He snaps a few shots for the Daily Bugle, then goes to a nearby secluded spot where he thinks about changing into Spider Man, and the black costume does the rest, enveloping him. Meanwhile, inside the fortress, Soundwave tells Megatron he's receiving a signal, so Megatron orders him to relay it. The message is from the United States Army. They say that they come in peace and only wish to talk. Megatron, in turn, tells Starscream to go deal with them, referring to the Army as a petty annoyance. So the Seekers, better known as Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp, transform into their jet modes and then fly outside, where they hit the Army with cluster bombs. The humans, in turn, scramble jets, which prepare to engage the Seekers in combat. But Soundwave ejects Buzzsaw, the gold condor like robot, which flies out and literally clips the wings of the jets. Another Earth jet flies behind Skywarp, hoping to get missile lock. But Skywarp teleports over top of the jet, transforms, then drops down onto it in his robot mode, ripping its wings off. Meanwhile, the Autobot known as Gears arrives on a scouting mission. He transforms into robot mode and tries to sneak up on the Decepticon base. Spider Man sees Gears and thinks to himself, this must be one of the robots returning to the nest. Spidey jumps onto the back of Gears, who tries to shoo him away. Spider Man asks if Gears wants to take over the world, and Gears calls Spidey an idiot, explaining that he's on his side. After a brief argument, Gears takes Spider Man back to Autobot headquarters. Later, after extensive introductions and explanations are made, Spider Man and Optimus Prime talk. Spidey says he's teamed up with some pretty weird characters over the years, but this takes the cake. Optimus says, I'm sure tales of your exploits would be interesting, Spider Man, but for now, can you inform your military to step aside and allow us to deal with the Decepticons? Spidey says, trust me, they'll never buy it coming from me, but I've got a plan. So Spider Man has the black costume, which can look like any clothing, take on the appearance of a military uniform. Then, when Hound, the Autobot Army Jeep, transforms into his vehicle mode, Spider Man acts like he's driving it. He drives past the military barricade, and the soldiers who might otherwise stop him couldn't care less that he's leading a convoy of vehicles in, because right now the army is bugging out. The Autobots engage the Decepticons in battle, while Gears and Spider Man make their way inside of the Decepticon fortress. While making their way through the metallic corridors of the complex, the heroes encounter Rumble and Frenzy, who are two human sized Decepticon robots. Spider Man shoots webs at them, tying them up, but then his spider sense goes crazy, and from the shadows leaps Ravage, the Decepticon Black Panther. Ravage narrowly misses Spider Man, who in turn jumps up onto a wall. Ravage chases Spidey, who makes his way through the hallways via web slinging. Spider Man tricks Ravage into circling around, and as soon as he's in position, Ravage gets punched out by Gears. Spidey and Gears make their way into the next room where Megatron is questioning the human known as Spike Witwicky. Spike refuses to cooperate, and while Megatron is distracted, Spider-Man uses his webbing on the Decepticon leader. Spidey says Bazooka Joe's all tied up, but then Megatron flexes, snapping the webs with ease. Megatron bellows, "Who dares to attempt to ensnare Megatron?" Spider-Man says, "Uh-oh." And Megatron replies, "Here, let me help you escape. The human is no longer required." And with that, Megatron blows a hole in the floor through which Gears and Spike fall. Spider-Man dives through the hole after him. The fortress was built on the edge of a cliff, so when they fall through that hole in the floor, they're falling for a while. Spider-Man starts shooting webs, and he saves Spike first. But the webs he uses to try to stop Gears are not strong enough to deal with both the weight of Gears and his momentum. So the webs all snap and Gears falls. Thankfully, there's a river below and Gears hits the water. He survives, but is knocked into stasis lock. Soon after the other Autobots have disengaged from the battle with the Decepticons on the other side of the mountain, they gather up every piece of Gears they can find. Then they transform and roll for home. Which brings us to our epilogue. Back at the Ark, Spike is reunited with his father, Sparkplug Witwicky, and high above them, Spider-Man is on the ceiling exploring the Ark. He says it's literally out of this world, and that even Reed Richards would feel like a kid at his first science fair in a place like this. Spidey tells the Autobots he has a plane to catch, and Optimus Prime thanks Spider-Man for his assistance today. Elsewhere, Shockwave is watching a television broadcast on the main view screen at Decepticon headquarters. A man named G.B. Blackrock is being interviewed because of a new kind of oil rig his company has come out with. Blackrock explains to the reporter that his oil company can now extract 50% more oil from the ground, more than any other company on Earth. He also introduces a young woman named Josie Beller, who designed the oil recovery systems. As she explains how her software works, Shockwave says the conquest of Earth and the enslavement of its people is going to be a simple task. Megatron thanks Shockwave for recently rescuing him from Autobot headquarters. But Shockwave says that before he intervened, Autobot victory over the Decepticons was assured. Shockwave says that the evidence says that Megatron's leadership was at fault, and that logic dictates that Shockwave must assume command of the Decepticons. And he does. But that's a story for another day. Today's video was what we refer to in our game as a player handout, which is to say it wasn't an actual game session that we played. It was more like information that the game master gave to the players to bridge the gap between our Transformer games that were set during World War II and the Transformer games that were played in the 1980s. Also, I like Transformers issue number 3 because Spider-Man made an appearance. So it kind of justifies why Transformer characters would be appearing in a superhero RPG at all. Having grown up in the 80s, I always liked seeing Spider-Man meet the Transformers or Superman meet He-Man. And to me, stories like this one reinforce the idea that the heroes from the 80s action toy lines and their respective comics and cartoons always could show up and fit right in a superhero genre. Speaking of which, we should be seeing more beloved 80s toy lines showing up in the next few games because now it's time for the Crisis on Infinite Earths. A few years back, I sent Larry Kenny a friend request on Facebook. And for those who are unfamiliar, Larry was the voice of Lion-O on an 80s cartoon called Thundercats. Anyway, so Larry was always really good about answering questions from fans. And I told him that I had started watching Thundercats to research it before they would appear in my role playing game. And I was unsure as to the setting. I explained that the pyramids and all of that made me wonder if it took place in the past, like Star Wars, and that maybe this was some sort of ancient aliens kind of thing. I could see the Thundercats being the inspiration for some of the cat related characters in Egyptian mythology, for instance. But then you get to these moments in the animated series where there's a motorcycle cop, and at one point there's a samurai, things that just wouldn't exist yet in ancient Egypt. So that got me wondering if Thundercats was actually set in the future and was post-apocalyptic, and that life is cyclical and that Egyptian stuff had become fashionable again. So anyways, I figured who better to ask than Lion-O himself. But Larry had no idea. He said when they were making the show, nobody ever talked about that kind of thing. And as a result, when some of my players, like James Porch in particular, really wanted to play a Thundercat in my game world, I wasn't really sure how to incorporate them. So, over the next few game sessions, you'll see various 80s characters be summoned to Earth in 1985 to participate in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. And that's partially why we ran our Crisis that way. We figured if the entire multiverse and if all of time and space was in danger, then surely every hero from every franchise should show up and lend a hand. Anyway, so that's what's coming soon. We hope that you enjoy the coming Crisis games. And as always, we also hope that you enjoyed today's video. If so, we would love it if you took a brief second to smash like, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, and leave a comment. From all of us here at the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure.